extend Pastime Park. In going through the deeds and the conveyances, for the original conveyances from the families to the park, there is a little bit of concern that the way that these properties were conveyed dedicated this particular property to park purposes only. There are some legal issues involved with regard to, I guess, how it would be interpreted. It says that it should keep the same acreage. And so one interpretation of this could be that the conveyance by the family originally that donated the property to the park could be saying, so long as you keep the acreage of the park the same, if we swapped a corner out here, we swapped a corner over there, that would be okay so long as we kept the acreage of the park intact. However, if you read it a different way, it sounds like they want to keep the totality of the acreage as it was conveyed in that condition. And there's a thing, and I won't get into ages of property law here, but there's a thing called reverter, that basically if you give something to someone on a condition, and the condition is later not fulfilled or broken, then that property then reverts back to the donor, the family, the grantor. In this case, the family that had donated the property, if there's a family member out there, they technically wanted to challenge this and say, no, you shouldn't have exchanged that property, even if it was in like kind, and even if it was insubstantial, and you did that with the Ballantyne family, you've now breached the terms of the deed and the covenant that we had running with the land at this day, parkland on this little wedge, and therefore we're going to claim that there's a reverter to the, I believe it was 26.8 acres that family had granted to the park. So that's not something that I necessarily suggest that we take a flyer on, and I think we're right, I think we can do it, I think legally we can do it, but it's not something I would go out on a limb and say that the village should do. There are legal alternatives to it. One of them would be filing a declaratory judgment action in the court to affirm that what we intend to do would be acceptable and that we can get it basically a judicial blessing on what we're doing. It doesn't terminate the deed or the terms of the deed or the conveyance, and it doesn't result in a reverter. And that's really kind of the thumbnail sketch of the whole thing. There's a lot more to it, but I don't want to bore you guys all to death. So my recommendation is, for that purpose of that Ballantyne property, is that we file a declaratory judgment action. It's not a terribly expensive matter. I mean, it'll be a filing fee and it'll be a little bit of briefing, and we have to, but I'm not expecting to take a legal bill on this by any stretch. But I think it's the appropriate thing to do before we do it. That is, again, subject to if you guys feel that, if council feels that desirous of proceeding with this transaction. I mean, I don't know, it may have sounded like a good deal at the beginning when they said let's just do a land swap, and maybe now thinking of the costs or any kind of risks that are involved, that you don't want to do it. The idea of the declaratory judgment is to take the risk out of it, because if the court comes back and says no, that would be a violation of the original covenant and the deed, it would result in a reverter, then we say, okay, we're not going to do it. And my understanding from talking to Kevin is with the Ballantyne family, there is not a strict deadline or timeline. Obviously everybody wants to do things as soon as possible, but that isn't necessarily, we're not under the gun on anything here. So I leave that up to the consideration of council, how you want to proceed, and you guys can give me your direction, and feel free to ask me any questions you have.
Is there any pros or cons from the park's perspective of the swap of land?
I don't think so. I mean, it's not used currently for much anyway, right? It's just kind of
The land that we would give in swap is currently farmed. It's not used as parkland per se, so it wouldn't be a loss of open space to us.
The idea behind it was that we have talked to Mr. Ballantyne for several years about development of that property, and once he decided to move forward, well, he's always said the swap of that property would help him have more usable land to develop. So that was kind of the motivation for us wanting to do it, so that he would go ahead and start advertising for that property to develop out.
The cost that we're incurring to do this, assuming we do it, are we splitting that with the family?
Well, and that's the other thing, and I meant to say that obviously at this point, anything's available and anything is subject to discussion, so my recommendation would be that we either split it with them or we offer that they, because again, it's not gonna be much, but we offer that they pay it and we're willing to do it as long as the court agrees with the position, or they agree to split it with us. However, I mean, I think anything's open for discussion, but I certainly would recommend that.
What about talking to the family that granted the land to us in the first place? If they could give us their blessing, then we don't need the rest of it.
The original deed conveyance was back in 1941, and it was from a gentleman by the name of Douglas Kirwan, who is from Lima. And so that's gonna be one of the challenges to begin with on this. Certainly, that is an option of trying to find the family, but then we'd have to find, do I have the whole family? Is this a person that actually would be the beneficiary? And, you know, they could, number one, I don't know that we could find them. Number two, I don't know if we would find the right person. You know, maybe that one person is the one that was carved out of the will and is not entitled to anything, and we gotta find another one. So I think going through the court and doing a publication notice in Lima, and all the areas, surrounding areas around here where different people donated and families donated land to the park, and also from where this grantor was originally from. We do notice by publication through the court to perfect service that way. And either people respond, and maybe nobody responds. Maybe they've scattered to the end of the earth and they don't care, and it's not an issue, and the court can then deem us to proceed on the briefing, and the court will decide right there. So, yeah, but I certainly agree with the recommendation that, you know, we talk to the family to see if they'd be willing to share some of this cost. I mean, they're, you know, at the end of the day, I think there's a mutual benefit to all of this, but I think probably they benefit a little bit more than we do in the deal. But there's a mutual benefit. I mean, obviously, we want them to develop that property, and basically what we're gonna end up with is some parkland that we don't use for parkland that we don't use.
I drove out by it, and that little triangle doesn't look like it's much anything. So, do you know exactly how that's gonna benefit them? Because it's not even road frontage.
He has said all along from the get-go that they would need to swap that out to make it workable for a large office, whatever, or some kind of
Okay.
development. He said all along that it would, because it's misshapen the way it is, and that to trade that out would help in selling it.
Do you think he's trying to acquire the area that belongs to the state also? Or do we know? We don't know.
I don't
He's never
know
made that indication.
I don't know.
It just concerns me that it's just odd, and what we'll be getting will be nothing. It's a big thicket, tree line, fenced area. For that to risk the park, I look at it that way. Heaven forbid somebody should come back and say, oh, you shouldn't have done that, the park is now ours.
Well, that's the idea of the declaratory judgment. We would,
Right.
I would never recommend that we go forward without getting the court's blessing first. But
Okay.
certainly that's,
Okay, I just
that's
wanna
the idea.
make sure
No,
that's
the-
clear.
Again, that's where to be honest, going forward as we have planned it or has been suggested, I think we're probably on good legal ground for it. I've researched the issue. I think we're probably on good legal ground. But I'm not feeling comfortable enough with saying, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So I'd rather have the court tell us that it's okay before we do anything like that. And also to make sure that everybody really wants it bad enough. I mean, maybe the family says, you know, look, if it's that much of a hassle, we don't really care that much, we'll still develop it, but we don't need that corner, I don't know.
They are, and maybe it's just my perspective, it has sat without being developed for years. And because we have continued to pursue them, and because we need economic development in the village, they, that was kind of their agree, you know, you agree to this and we can move forward, we would be willing to move forward. So, is council okay with us talking to the Valentine Family Limited about possibly sharing in that cost, or just wanna ask them to take on the cost and see if they'll go for that first.
What do we think the cost is going to be? Hundreds, thousands, millions?
I would be surprised if it would be more than $1,500. I think it would probably be less than that. We'd have to think of the notice cost and the filing fee, but to be honest, I've already done most of the research to brief it out. It wouldn't be very difficult. As far as our negotiation position, to the extent that this is a public meeting, kind of giving that one up. But yeah, we can talk to them.
Yeah, I would ask, why don't we ask them first if they'll pay for it, seems,
Mhm.
but then, especially if we're gonna do all the heavy lifting on it.
And maybe they want somebody to do the heavy lifting and we don't have to deal with it. They can
Okay.
choose if they want to do it, that's fine too.
In full payment.
I would say, yeah. What do you think on that?
I'd like to have a decision that if it's not agreed upon in full, what is your, so that we can negotiate this through and I don't have to come back to you and say, they agreed to $750, are you in agreement with paying the other $750? We can move this forward fluidly.
Well, why would they agree to 1,500 if we open council tell them we'll agree to 750? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we aren't mitigating his risk, we're mitigating our risk, so. I think 1,500, I would ask him, would he consider participating? Maybe throw a figure at him, a ballpark, but I think from a village perspective, 1,500 is a minor investment to protect our interest and also move forward with some economic development in terms of commercial.
Did he propose this to us, or did we propose it to him?
He proposed this, well, it's been a
It's
while
been,
back.
he proposed it to us many years ago, and discussions have been off and on, but the village has never said yes to it to this point. We believe he's serious enough to develop that tract, that if we take that problem out of the equation, we might see some commercial development in town.
I say after the full amount. That's my thinking on it.
I'd agree.
I mean, if he's willing to go, be a drop in the bucket.
He's the one wanting.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't disagree, but just for the record, Mr. Valentine is the person that donated that tract of land to the state of Ohio so they could put the bypass in. So he's made a major financial contribution to start with.
All right, so is everybody good with us asking him to cover the cost of this?
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable. We're stewards of public money. He understands that, so.
Okay, all right. Good, thank you.
Should we do that by motion real quick?
Sure. Was that a motion that you made?
Yeah, I move that we ask Mr. Valentine to cover the cost of any and all legal, I'll help you out here, what do we call this, legal
expenses.
Legal expenses
Costs.
for the property swap.
Right.
Second.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Walter?
Yes.
All right. Anything else? Okay. So, did you have anything else?
No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's in the scribble.
Lose track here. All right, planning and zoning. Kevin, do you want to
Touch on Oak Grove now.
talk about local government?
Before you tonight is the approval of Oak Grove subdivision, and Terry Andrews from Evergreen Land Company is here representing that project. This has been through P&Z last month, and they had made the recommendations to bring this forward to you. I believe you all had a set of design plans given to you. In my review and Mr. Jordan's review of the plans, and And I should state that P and Z hasn't seen the revised plan since their approval. They approved it with some minor changes to it, and they never put their eyes on the plans as you have it today.
It was left with Mr. Jordan
But yeah,
to ensure that what
Right.
they had asked be taken care of.
we do have a couple of concerns, mostly minor concerns within the plan as it was submitted. A couple of bike paths we need to ask to be realigned a little bit. But the more involved ones are, there were 4 streets that were asked to be reduced from the width of 27 feet to 24 feet. And we have some concerns about that with serviceability down the road, as trash trucks can get through if parking is on both sides of the street, snow plows, fire trucks, and such. So that's one concern we have, and I'd really like to stick with the 27 feet throughout the project. I think there is one subdivision, and our subdivision code does allow that to go to 24 feet on one cul-de-sac. The other is there's a discrepancy as far as the minimum building standards, specifically the square footage of the homes. It was our interpretation early on that the square footages were quite a bit larger than what is in the plans. And I think it was just some miscommunication between ourselves and the developer, and something we need to work out. So I would ask that we not take action on this tonight and send it back to P&Z for a little bit further discussion. It's a big project, and I'd just like to take a step back and get it right the first time.
Okay. Have you had a chance to talk to Mr. Andrews on this?
Mr. Jordan, I spoke to him at length, and I just saw you come in a little bit, or right before I sat down, so I didn't get a chance to talk to Terry.
Okay.
I apologize for my ignorance. I have been through this before, so maybe a couple of questions I'll ask you academic. But as I understand the process and how it works, he submits a proposal for the development that goes through P&Z, and then it comes to us for approval. Is that correct?
P&Z makes a recommendation, and then under, what is it, chapter 113603, that's the process by which P&Z makes a recommendation. Council then votes to approve, amend, modify, but there are certain voting restrictions, like a 3/4 majority or a recommendation.
And have there been certain revisions that this council has already approved that's now different than the current one in front of us?
Perhaps with the minimum building standards, I think it was the understanding of council early on in discussions with the developer that the square footages were going to be similar to the new California subdivision that he currently is working on. And what is currently planned is smaller than that.
Okay, so when he submits to us, or to P&Z, a new addition, a new revision, whatever it's called, as I understand it, he's not, at least at this point, we have to kind of catch these changes. Is that right? He's not required to tell us, these are the things, Plain City, that I've changed.
Can I offer some assistance here? Basically what would be recommended by planning and zoning to council would be an agreed plan between P&Z and the developer. I think what Kevin's pointed out is there may have been a miscommunication during that last P&Z meeting. It's always good for council to review the plans, but it's not really our job to second guess the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the zoning inspector and the engineer that the village retains to represent us. We have the ability to reject it if we want to, I mean, if there's a bona fide reason, but it's not a direct responsibility of council to do the review. That's what planning and zoning is there for.
But, so but if it comes forward, and we know there's something that's different from what came before P and Z and they were recommending, then it is your responsibility to catch that.
Right, and I guess that's where my question was ultimately headed. It seems as if we're being put in the position to become engineers ourselves to say, oh, wait, we found a needle in a haystack with a change that you didn't tell anybody about, and we just about approved that. To me, that seems a little bit backwards, that we should require this individual to tell us whenever a revision is changed, so we know where to look, and have the onus fall on him. If you didn't tell us that this was the change, then even though we approved it with the change, you didn't bring it to our attention. It doesn't, it seems like the onus is on us to find something that, we're not adept at doing.
They provided a document and used a track change on it, so every change that took place, I think that the point that Kevin's making is there may have been a miscommunication because P&Z approved it with the agreed to changes. The two parties separated, the documents were updated, and there may have been, that miscommunication was flushed out when this package arrived.
Right, I can explain it. On December 2nd, we received the new plan, the proposal. And on this one, and there were a number of things I think we were trying, P&Z at least, Mark isn't here to talk, but when P&Z met with the developer the last time, and I don't think Kevin was unable to make it because of the conflict, so there were a number of discussions that were going on, and we were trying to keep up with the schedule and some of the proposals, and I know that at that meeting, for the first time, they had talked to P&Z about reducing some of the roadway sizes, and P&Z said, no, we don't want to do it to all of them, but we do see some interior roads that we would agree to reduce. And then there were some questions about where some of the bike paths went that were present on a November plan, but not present on the December 2nd plan. And so what happened was, I think P&Z kind of said, okay, we agree in concept to here are some changes that we want to do cooperatively. And I know the developer has made those changes in this January 6th plan. But when you go back and you compare the December 2nd to the January 6th, you see that there is a track change difference on the square footage requirement. And I'm not certain that planning and zoning knew or understood that that was going to be a difference, because if you look at the December 2nd proposal, the square footage for a ranch was 1,800 square feet. Square footage for a two-story or split level was 2,000 on the January, and that's what was voted on December 18th. So then on January 6th, when we come around, we have the new plan, and I think they had intended all along, and I think we were just, it wasn't in this plan, but it was 1,500 for square foot for ranch and 1,600 for two-story split level. So my concern is that we have planning and zoning thinking that the December 2nd terms as far as square footage is what they were approving, and when we're looking at January 6th, it's something different. And I'm not suggesting all that, I don't think the developer was acting in bad faith. I think that this, because I think somewhere else in the plans that number had come up before, but it wasn't in this booklet, and I don't think anybody caught it. And so ordinarily, under these circumstances, under Chapter 1136, Planning and Zoning makes a recommendation, it comes to this council, we have to vote it up or down. But in this particular circumstance, I don't think we get to the point of voting, because I don't think we're voting on what P&Z voted on. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison, so I think it's got to go back to make sure that P&Z knows exactly what they're talking about, and we're on the same page with the developer, so that the next meeting, when they make a recommendation, it comes up to here, we're good to go, and everybody's on the same page.
Can I ask a question, Kevin, or whomever? I see the square footage for the ranch and the two-story split level. I didn't see in here, did they specify how many of the total homes will be ranch, or that's just all based on market?
That'll just be based on market. But we provided a pretty detailed letter on the changes we made, and we even highlighted the square footage changed because the plan showed 1 square footage, and the document, the booklet showed something different, so that's why we highlighted that, and there was some discussion that it was even gonna not come to council today. So we were aware of that last week, so I was a little surprised that we were on the agenda. So we understand we may need to go back to P and Z.
We appreciate that, thank you. I think it's case to be
So, this plan has changed, so there is nothing to vote on tonight. So, unless you have additional questions, you just like answer it now. We will send it back to P and Z Wednesday night, and you'll see it again then, I would guess, at the next meeting. All right?
Just
Yes.
one other thing was, we did give extra plans for P and Z, and evidently they didn't get those copies, maybe, or maybe they did.
For council?
No, we gave extra copies to go back to, when we had the last hearing, it was agreed to, we'd bring extra copies and give them the planning commission, so they would see the same thing you saw. So I didn't know if they got those.
They haven't met yet.
They've
Yeah,
not
we
met
meet on
since the
Wednesday.
last time you met.
We meet Wednesday. But, all right. You sit on Board of Zoning Appeals, there's nothing in process right now, right?
As far as Oak Grove,
Anything?
we have a couple things talking about the wind energy. I think it's gonna be something that we're gonna be voting on very soon.
For P and Z.
I'm sorry, for
BZA.
BZA. We do have an issue with BZA because we have to have a vote on amending their, changing their,
Uptown.
yeah, well, it's not just the uptown, I'm talking about Oak Grove. We have to have a vote on they have to have a variance to change, the use
Oh, yeah.
variance on the property. Because it went back
All
to
from
ag.
ag to P.
Yeah, to
Oh,
ag, to
well,
PRD.
that's what they were going to vote on tonight,
Tonight was
is to
what was
accept the
coming.
entire PRD.
Right, so, but that,
And
we actually,
within that, it would include their design plan.
right, but BZA has to vote on that. For the variance, at least.
Well,
It'd be probably worth a double check with the planned residential district. I think the process might be slightly different than a standard zoning district.
I'll take a look at it.
so, right now, there is nothing
There's
pending
nothing,
for
nothing
BZA.
pending for BZA.
Okay, all right. Sean, is there anything to report for Park at this point?
Actually, yes, I think Kevin, are we good for a meeting next?
27.
2 weeks. So Park will meet on the 27th at 6 o'clock in council chambers before our next village council meeting. So we'll get that on the calendar and let the committee know and let the public know.
Okay.
There is one other thing I wanted to bring up tonight. This is kind of an issue that we've talked about in the fall, I guess, but Bicentennial Park and the other parks in town. I just wanted to know maybe from the administration's position and maybe the police, what is the rules, or what are the rules if you were to alter or to put things on parkland without permission? Some folks put up a little white picket fence that the council took down around in the fall, and that was put up a few weeks ago around the Christmas tree. And some folks came along the Bicentennial Park and put extra Christmas lights, and that blew the fuse and took out the Christmas tree for about a week. So about a fourth of the Christmas season was lost because someone or somebody or some family or something came on and decided they needed more lights there, and they wanted to add the picket fence that was removed. Now the fence, I believe, is down now because the council had voted to take that down, so I think Kevin and his guys took it down. But just the idea, what are the rules? Do we have any ordinances on the records now, or on the books now that say you can't do this? What do we charge people with if they put up their own fence? Is it littering? What do we call that? And the idea of the liability of messing with the electrical stuff. There's liability, I imagine, for the village if someone gets in there and starts messing with electricity. Plus, the cost of powering more lights, or in this case, I guess we saved a little money because it went down for a week, but just the idea that who can do this? Can anybody just go and put whatever they want on park land? It seems like this issue is not going to go away, and so I didn't know if we have anything on the books to deal with this.
I think that we do not, and I would, I think that's a good point, something good for Parks to review and bring forward a recommendation to council. I think that, in some cases, what has happened, people have been generous to want to do things for the village, to improve the village. So, so we have roses around the park, entrance of the park, because the group wanted to do that. We have plantings elsewhere, and what happens is once, as with many of us, we get an inch, we take a mile. And so it has just escalated at times, and so more has happened and occurred than what was given permission for, and we do need some kind of policy to deal with it, because you don't want to hurt people, you don't want to step on toes, you want to keep peace, but at some point you do have to draw the line, and I do think that if Parks could review that and bring a recommendation forward, I think that's a wise thing. Are we all in agreement with that? Good. Are you good with that, Sean?
I am good with that. Maybe we could touch base with Chief and just kind of see what are our options. Currently, if someone destroys park property now, there is, I guess, some kind of a
But
statute.
that wasn't the intent, I would say. It wasn't to destroy property, it was to improve. And things did go awry, obviously.
But it very easily could have burnt the tree down and burnt the, so there's,
It could
at
have.
some point, we have to, I think, probably deal with this a little bit more sternly than we have in the past. Because obviously they didn't, whoever this is, they have not been reading the paper, or they have been reading the paper and they want to, I don't know, but it just seems like it's, and this is the very fence that we took down, right? The exact fence that we took down. You had it stored someplace in the village. Someone came on village property somewhere, got the fence, brought it back out, and put it up.
We stored it for them so that they can come recover their property. They called, recovered their property.
And put it back. Well, that is a different story.
I do think that Parks is more than capable of
Okay, well, we
looking into this.
will look into it, and we will come with a
providing
recommendation for an ordinance or something to kind of deal with this kind of
Sure.
stuff.
I think it'd be important in that, and the mayor alluded to it, is culpable mental state. What is the person's intent? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? Because it's not always our decision whether or not somebody gets charged. We confer with the prosecutor, have a discussion, and it's ultimately their decision whether or not charges are, proceeded or not. So we enforce an on-view law, but if it's an investigation, such as you're mentioning, there could be many variables. So we would have to investigate it thoroughly, take statements, confer with the prosecutor, and they would determine whether or not any applicable charges went into offense. So I would suggest that if you're going to create a law, now would be the time to create it where the culpable mental state and certain factors are put in there, whether it's knowingly or, with intent, or regardless of what the situation is, now is your time to probably create maybe just a simple no trespassing between these times or for these purposes or whatever. And I think it's something that a committee could form.
Yeah. And certainly talk to Chief when you go that direction. Anything else?
That's all.
Kevin, did you have anything you want to share with CRC at this point?
No, we meet next Wednesday for Union County CIC, and also I'll be attending CIC.
And we ended up, last year, we had 402 fire runs, 1,751 squad runs, and that's quite a bit.
Is that just within the village?
That's within our fire district.
Okay, which is larger than
Our fire district goes clear down to almost Route 70 on Plain St. George's. And it goes on the other side of Unionville Center. It's a pretty big district. And 2014, we're gonna probably have to have a replacement or tax levy on to replace a existing fire levy. And we want everybody to vote for that too, and we need it. And that's about all I have.
All right. Any questions? Thank you. Rob, do you know about design review then?
We're gonna have an orientation session tomorrow night at 6:30 at the city council chambers to go over roles and responsibilities for the two new members. And then at that point, you may want to swear them in prior to the next DRB meeting, which is, I believe, on Monday, February 3rd. So possibly swear them in at the next council meeting.
Okay. And DRB members are Jim Udaly, you may have to help me. Jim Udaly, Eric Medici, Linda Peters, Mark Hostetler,
Dr. Miller.
Alan Perkins, and Doc Miller. Has Doc Miller said anything? He's not, he's
His
gonna
term has-
continue.
He's been termed,
Right.
so I assume he
He's
hasn't
not.
communicated anything.
Okay, good, thank you. All right. We are going to skip pending items, and that will be on the agenda for next meeting. So, new members, if you have any questions about the dog park consideration, Chief and our solicitors have been looking at that, and tips, probably some of you were in the meeting when Chris Schmink came and shared, and then Kevin and Bob have kind of done research there as well as Paul. So if you have questions before that meeting, please ask. Old business. We are ready to address, or go into the third reading for ordinance 3013, which is the water and sewer rates. Greg, is that why you're here?
Oh, it's about that, it's about the article on the water and sewer rates, yes.
Okay. So, I'm going to skip to visitors and allow you to address council before we take this action.
Okay, thanks, council, mayor, and my 7-year-old son for sticking with us.
This is Greg Detzler.
Yeah, my name's Greg Deckler, I live on Jackson Boulevard. Had some clarifying questions, to be brief, about the Plain City hike, water hike, it appeared in the paper. And to summarize, basically, there's a $100,000 deficit in sewer capital fund. It's being funded out of the Plain City General Fund. It says here that subsidizing water and sewer costs is not a common occurrence in the municipalities, according to Walter, so Councilman Walter. Water and sewer costs is generally not subsidized, but the cost is directly passed on to the consumers, Mr. said. In taking a look at the 2013 sewer operating budget, there's a $300,000 line item for the debt services to OWDA. And am I correct in assuming that OWDA is the Ohio Water Development Authority? And is that service, is that related to description of WWTP upgrade and expansion, EPA ID CS 392-658-01 in the amount of $4.5 million? Is that correct?
That's our loan.
That's what that service is, that's what that debt service is paying on?
The wastewater treatment plant loan.
Okay. And that's the upgrade and expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, correct? And so, is it correct to say then that that Plain City residents are not being asked to fund just the cost of the sewer, but also the expansion that occurred in 2007?
Currently, that is correct.
Okay.
It says here in the PT, this is the permit to install for the same. During planning for the proposed project, Plain City segregated the wastewater treatment costs that were for repair replacement and performance enhancement from those costs which were considered to be attributable to capacity expansion. The portion of the debt attributed to capacity expansion will be repaid through tap-in fees for new construction. These tap-in fees are expected to generate $175,600 per year. The portion of the debt attributed to repair, replacement, and performance enhancement will be repaid through the existing user charge system. Are we collecting $175,600 in water, in tap-in fees?
No,
How much have we collected in tap-in fees since 2007 when the loan was taken out?
we don't have that information here right now.
In
Can certainly
round
get that
figures?
for you if you'd like it.
Okay, are we talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions?
I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, so we don't have an order of magnitude of how much we've collected, although it's 8,000, approximately 8,000 per tap-in. As that was stated earlier in this council meeting.
Say that
The
again.
sewer tap-in fee is $8,000 roughly.
It is currently, I'm not sure when the last time was it was raised exactly, but
Do we have any
It is
idea how many tap-ins there have been since 2007?
not many. As you know, I believe, we went into, not long after that occurred, we had a crash in our economy,
Oh, yeah.
and we've had virtually no development. I mean, several things happened in there. We had put a hold on, help me, Bob.
We put a moratorium in to make sure
Moratorium.
that we didn't build more houses than we had capacity to service. And then the village went forward with the expansion and upgrade to meet EPA requirements that were mandatory. I believe the budgeting process was assuming approximately 30 homes per year to be able to retire the debt. These are rough numbers. And if you look between 2008 and present, we haven't come anywhere near close to 30 homes per year. In fact, it's probably been a total of 30 homes in that entire period of time, if that.
Okay, now my understanding is also there was a minimal degradation alternative that would have addressed the pollution options, but not expanded the wastewater treatment plant. Is that correct? That's also our UTI? The minimal degradation alternative?
I haven't looked at that in
Do we have
several
a,
years.
do we have a breakdown? It says you guys broke out the cost between expansion and improving. Do we have a breakdown of what was the cost of improving versus expansion? Do we know what that number is out of the 4.5 million?
Can you jump to what your concern is so that we could address the concern?
Well, my concern is a statement in the newspaper that says that we're being, that it's generally, if you take this at face value and kind of paraphrase, it's that, well, we should expect to pay for this because it's just the cost of operating the sewer system. But it's not the cost of operating the sewer system, it's the cost of operating the sewer system plus the expansion that occurred. The $4.5 million loan that was taken out on basically the gamble that we would grow. But is that a fair statement?
I wouldn't say that personally, a gamble, no.
The speculation that we would grow?
It was on,
The hope?
we had two developers at that time, Oak Grove was ready to move forward back then, and so was another development.
I understand, there was some forecasting involved, correct?
I'm sorry?
Forecasting, you'd be a better word than gamble? Forecasting?
Maybe?
Well, isn't it also true in order to lure developers, that we need to be able to show to them that we have capacity to build these homes?
My understanding at the time was that, and I may be incorrect in this, but because it's rough numbers, that we were basically at 50% capacity on the wastewater treatment plant.
We were full.
We actually put a moratorium in because we were afraid of going over capacity and being fined.
I can check those facts.
Sure you can. It's a matter of public record.
Okay, that's my only statement. Thank you.
So it's fair to say that back in the day when you were deciding on the need for this, you felt there was a critical need for it, that we were capacity, and then you thought you take out the loan in hopes that there would be significant development that to help pay for the loan payment on it, which didn't really turn out to be because no one could forecast what happened in 07, 08.
Correct.
with everything in the economy.
Correct.
In 2003, the big concern in the community was too much residential growth, and the comprehensive plan requested that that be slowed down. Yeah, so, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, and it's very difficult to manage. There's economic factors that are certainly beyond the control of council. As far as the wastewater treatment plant debt, basically, I believe that's the purpose of our surcharge, is to really focus on that. That has nothing to do with the rates. The rates are to cover our operational cost for water and sewer, so that's the rate increase. The surcharge is part of the ordinance that we're going to vote on tonight, that's intended to address the shortfall in being able to retire a debt obligation that the village took on in good faith back in the 2007, 2008 timeframe.
But that's still being paid by the residents, correct?
Yeah, it's a public debt.
Which according to PTI, that was, I mean, is the EPA aware that you're charging the residents for this when you guys basically said you wouldn't?
Well, I would certainly assume they understood that, because we actually talked to them about deferring the debt until the economy turned around, and they said they would not consider that.
I imagine the EPA being inflexible, it's amazing. Sorry.
But we still have this debt, what alternative do you suggest we do?
Well, I don't know if it's passing, basically shoving through a rate hike before the public is fully aware of the reasons for it is the right course of action.
We have talked about a rate hike for a very long time. This is not shoving through.
Well, I mean, this is the first I saw, it was November
Well,
30th,
but it's not the first, it's been discussed.
I understand.
Okay, and if we don't do a rate hike, what should we do? What's your thoughts?
Obviously, I mean, you failed to pass a police levy, you failed to pass an income tax, so obviously now the next step is to shove through a water rate hike. I mean,
Okay.
You guys
All
are
right.
trying to get money, you'll find one way to do it. If we don't do it this way, you'll find another way to charge.
But we owe
them.
this debt, that's black and white. If we don't do a rate hike or a surcharge or whatever, what's the alternative? What do you suggest?
It just seems a little underhanded to me, bottom line.
That's not a suggestion.
Yeah, what's your thoughts?
Well, have you guys come clean with the public and asked them and told them exactly the reason for the financial issues within Plain City? Have you come right out and said, in this paper, this is why we're having the financial issues in Plain City? This is it.
For
Here it is.
a
It's this
very
debt that
long
we took
time,
on.
we have done that.
I have
For a
never seen
very
that.
long time.
And
I think we could probably take the speech from hundreds of cities and villages across this country. The cost of everything is going up, the economy has slowed down, so the cost to buy things goes up, and we don't have as much money coming in.
But this
I
was
think
a
we could
bad-
take the same playbook from Detroit and any other major city that's having problems.
This was a bad gamble that was taken.
You know what, there's one person on council that was on council at that time.
I understand that.
So the decisions were made at that time with the information they had. And as the council members come on, like the three new ones here tonight, to make a difference and do the right thing. And that's what they were doing. They felt like they were making the best decisions for the village at that time.
But if I take out a loan to go gamble on something, I don't ask other people to pay for it. I find a way to pay for that myself.
This is a village, and we pay our way as residents. That's the way it works.
But do you really think that the residents of this town expected their leaders to go out and take such a risky gamble to the tune of $4.5 million?
I'm not going to argue that point. I mean, it was done years ago, and it was done with purpose and meeting, and many, many thoughtful meetings and discussions. Lots went into making those decisions at that time.
Had that accounting not been done, would we be able to discuss Oak Grove?
No, absolutely not. If we couldn't have a growth. But that's
So therefore, it's paying off. The gamble is now paying off.
absolutely.
So why can't Oak Grove pay for this instead of raising water and sewer rate, hiking the water and sewer rates?
It really is not going to change the water and sewer rates. Those are operational costs.
Well, the surcharge there.
The surcharge, there's a debt service, so,
Why can't the new people coming in that are taking advantage of the sewer, the expansion of the sewer, pay for it versus the residents that already tapped into it.
The surcharge is not, it's not an item that has to stay. If the market, the housing market gets to the point where we're getting tap fees to the point that meets the projections, the chances are the surcharge could be taken off.
I've never seen a tax go away.
Well, actually, we did about 4 years ago.
And again, to be clear, on this particular resolution of the surcharge, it is not a tax, it's a surcharge that's tied directly to the retirement of the debt. When the debt is retired, there is no more surcharge.
But that retirement debt
It's
is
not like a tax.
expansion.
Tax exists because it's on the books and it stays there forever. This is a surcharge that is tied to the retirement of the sewer debt. When that's retired, surcharge is gone.
One last thing. Mr. Beckler, there's been no attempt to do anything behind the scenes. In September, Personnel and Finance reported that to council in a public meeting that water rates and sewer rates would have to be looked at. There was a detailed analysis, cost analysis, and then also a regional analysis of water and sewer rates that was used for the purposes of making a recommendation to council. The press got it. Even our new council members received a copy of it because we knew they would be involved with the ultimate decision process. And it's all been done in an open and public environment.
Mr. Moore, how many years have you been telling us we need to raise rates?
Long time.
And in public meetings?
I was on the water committee way back 20 years ago. And one of the problems I finally figured out was they told the people that was on the water committee that we need to raise these rates. But we're not the one that raises the rates. The finance committee raises the rates. They didn't know about it. So we should have raised them a little bit every year, the water rates and sewer rates. Then we wouldn't have to have a big raise now. And if you take a tour of the plant down there, there's a lot of work needs done down there. Just ask Kevin, he knows.
Definitely.
There's walls down there that's deteriorating, needs replaced. We're gonna be in big trouble.
It's a constant effort, and when you're behind, and you don't have enough, then you're always fighting to be able to take care of things.
When we
making
started out
choices.
on that one schedule, we was the highest rates around, now we're the lowest.
Yeah, it's true.
That's not true.
We are.
No, we're not, but
I'm
Bob,
sorry?
you mentioned Bob,
But, I'm sorry, state your name.
Tim Miner.
Thank you.
You mentioned that in 2003, you were told to put a delay on building because of that.
No.
That's what you just said.
No.
No, it was,
Right on the
we
thing.
knew we were running out of taps,
Exactly.
but in
And that the
2003,
sewer, you guys needed to stop. It's been recorded, so we'll replay it.
2003 was the comprehensive plan that requested that there be a reduction in building in the village because there was too much residential happening too quick. There wasn't a moratorium that went in until probably 2007 or 2008, and that's because we were running out of taps. And we actually had reports each month that told us how many taps we had available to allocate to new development. One of our real concerns was to make a commitment to a developer and then not be able to deliver the capacity that he relied on. So
You knew back then everything was going south, but you took it upon yourselves to go, well, let's go ahead and build that.
no,
No.
no.
Yeah.
There were 3 options actually in the PTO. So you guys chose one of them. There was one option that did not include expansion.
Again, this was a council that was trying to do the best thing for the village at the time, make wise decisions, move forward so that the village could grow at a steady pace to support the residents. So they made the decisions according to the information they had at the time. They made the best decision they can, and we're not going to sit here and keep arguing it. I understand you have some frustration.
I think you guys are asking people to pay for a game.
We're all residents having to pay, every one of us. And maybe we're not all happy about it either, but it is what it is. And we have to be able to pay our bills or we go in default. All right,
I suggest we move forward with the old business.
all right. So we are on the third reading of ordinance 3013, the water and sewer rates.
I have a question before we do that.
Sure.
I was on the EPA, looking at how they set up water rates and stuff. In there, it did state that, you know, if there was a huge gap, that you could contact your state about, to discuss restructuring options. Did we do that? Do we have details on that?
They didn't give us much option. When we contacted them, we talked to them about, could we pay our interest rate for a time until we got to a point where things had balanced back out. And they just, in fact, they laughed at us the first time and said no. And we still went at it again. Did we go through someone else?
I went with something, you went with
Yes.
somebody about the.
Yes. Renee tried it then again, and then I tried to go through another route over their head, the people that we were forced to talk to someone above them to try to get that. And they said, that's not an option. We don't ever do anything. You have to figure it out.
That money was
So they
committed
weren't
to
willing to
bonds.
help us figure out a rate structure. I mean, according to this, the EPA, they are willing to help figure out, I'm not saying they'd be willing to take on our debt,
No.
but they're supposed to be able to help us figure out a structuring option on our rates. I mean, it
Maybe
even
that's
says in here,
possible.
it's unlikely you would eliminate the deficit through customer charges alone.
It says what again?
It's unlikely that you could eliminate the deficit through customer charges alone, if it's 50% or more, that you're trying to, the gap.
Yeah, actually, there's two, we're trying to cover it with a surcharge in the short term, and we're trying to stimulate development in the long term, where we can retire the debt with the proceeds from the sewer tap fees. So there's really two options that we're pursuing in parallel.
But they're both for the customer. But it's both, the surcharge and your rates are both impacting your customer.
So,
So are we increasing our part of it, or do we have, but our budget, is our budget increased on that piece of it?
Actually, we're subsidizing the
Are we
water and sewer
planning
right
for
now out of
ongoing?
general fund.
say that again, Bob.
We're using general fund to help subsidize water and sewer operations because our rates fail to cover our cost. And that was part of that analysis that we did and handed out in November.
Did we look at future repairs, future equipment needs during this time as well? I mean, I didn't see that anywhere in here, and it's not broke down, so for me to make an informed decision, I'd really like to have that piece.
If we looked at putting future repairs and replacements on there, we would have to really hike up. Hopefully through some planning that's going on now within the administration, we're looking at developing CIPs and trying to store money away for those projects, identify the larger expenditures, and put money away each year so that when those expenditures do come due, we have the money available. So we're working on those plans, but I don't think they can be instituted in the surcharge, only because it would be a huge dollar.
And another point to this is that we're on our third superintendent in a short time. And so we've not had, it's not been operated the way it should have at times, or have we been made aware of things that should have been taken care of in timely fashions. We are now on our third one that we believe will help us to get to some better understandings and clearer picture of what we need to do going forward.
I also know in future meetings, we had some citizens concerned regarding the elderly homes. Has any more of that been discussed, or?
Right, I did mention that, Colleen, at our last meeting, and I suggested that I wouldn't recommend that we put things on hold to figure out how to address that, but we asked Paul to see if there was, what options might be available. And it is tricky because it's difficult to treat residents as two separate classes. I mean, a resident is a resident. And so I'm concerned that there may not be an ability, but I thought we should at least explore those options.
I mean, how dire is it that we have this surcharge? I mean, I understand the rate hikes, that's fine. Could we just maybe have a little higher rate hikes to eliminate the surcharge? That way people are paying for what they're using instead of having this flat $10 fee. Because my concern is, you know, single people with kids, the elderly, you know, people that are struggling now.
And they're pretty substantial increases as well. I mean, granted, I understand that we should have done this way back when and done 2 or 3, but now we're trying to do it all in 3 years. Pretty substantial increases each year.
Into what were the tap fees that will be coming in from Oak Grove, won't they? Or you just
And
don't want?
that's one of the, kind of
Can't
how it
bank
kept
on that?
snowing. Yeah, it just snowballed from, in 2008, okay, we're gonna get Oak Grove going.
Mhm.
Another year, well, let's hope that something else comes to fruition. It never does. We just kind of keep kicking that can down the road rather than taking a hard approach and addressing the situation that nobody really wants to address. And it just gets worse as we keep kicking that down the road.
Because we at least have one payment we can't take care of. We have $250,000 payments a year. We have at least one we can't take care of.
So right now, unless, without a surcharge and the absence of a vehicle, we may be in trouble with, as early as later, second half of this year, if my memory is correct.
And who holds this loan?
OWDA.
State.
And that's a loan, when you go into loans with them, you taking out a loan helps support another entity get a loan, and so that's why they won't typically give any leeway on those ones. If they do, then it's hurting another municipality who got the same type of loan. And I had another thought there I was going to share. What was that? And we're going to see with our budget, there's flexibility in that budget because we don't have hard and fast numbers that we can depend on from our income, tax, for instance, in 14, we're still getting some estate tax money, and yet that's money that we really shouldn't touch for 3 years because they can come back and take some back from us. And so our budget will look better at points in here, and you're going to wonder, well, what happened to your budget? Why didn't you have that? Well, that's exactly why, because those things happen that you cannot know ahead of time. We already know we got some estate tax already this year. So it already increased what our income, our revenue is, but it isn't something we could have banked on, and it's not something we can still even really use. I guess in a dire situation we could and take our chances that they might ask for it back or a good portion of it back. So that's where we're at, to be able to say hard and fast, oh no, we're going to get plenty more money coming in from these places. We just don't, we're not sure what it'll be, but we're going to get more from each one of those entities. Let's just move forward, not by taking any action again, and hope we can get enough to pay that $150,000 in December. And that's how it has gotten where we are, you know, where we, yeah, Oak Grove's going to build, so let's not raise any rates right now. On the next year, well, we've got, the school has a levy on, let's not raise rates this year. Every year it was something else that council felt like, let's wait. If we wait, it'll be better next year. And that's where we're at again. We have to, maybe we can reduce it some, but personal and finance have done their work. They have put time and effort into this to figure out what will work and what will cover the expenses that we have. And you can take their recommendation or not. And then you'll have to make, if you don't, then you have to make decisions about, all right, how do we cover the payment in December? That would be the next decision.
I just think there's questions regarding the subsidy that we still have. I mean, we know how it's gonna impact some of our businesses and the hourly, and those haven't been answered yet. I don't know how you can approve something when you still don't have all the facts to influence.
So, by facts, you're talking about,
Well, if we've requested from Mr. Lafayette to get some options available to us to answer some of those questions.
That was only specific to senior citizens in government subsidized housing where a budget had already been put in place. That was it. And they couldn't increase their budget for 2014, so we were looking at maybe, is there something where those senior citizens could be helped in the 2014 timeframe? That was the only item that we asked Mr. Lafayette to review.
And I actually did some research on that. Spoke to a handful of communities, and it's kind of all over the place and up to each individual entity of what you want to do and how much you want to do for those homes and seniors. I mean, it's anything from $1 off to a percentage off, or complete subsidy. There's really no hard, fast rule or procedure to follow. It's kind of up to whatever the individual entity desires.
We're talking, if we take into account the decrease in the trash and that collection, say, it's like saving us $2 a month. So really, the surcharge, it's about $8 a month. Is that what we're asking? In addition to the rate, it's a $10 surcharge minus $2. We're at $8 a month. We're asking every resident, every home to pay, whether it's an apartment or whether it's a home with 10 kids, they're going to pay $8 a month additional in addition to the rate increase. So, and we're also asking the village just to bite the bullet on this one. Hindsight 20, sub 20. We've got to pay our bills. We need an extra $8 to cover the debt so that we can all have water, clean water, and a sewer system. It's hard, but it'll be even harder, I think, come the end of the year when we say, well, now we have to make up $150,000. How many policemen and public works people do we need to let go so that we can pay this debt because we're obligated to do it? Or how many things do we cut in the town, or services do we cut to the bone? Beyond just the fat, now we're in the bone just to pay the bills. It's just it's a difficult thing we have to do, but I don't think we've found any other way and I think with the surcharge, if we come back and find a way that maybe we cut off a couple dollars a month, or we can amend that, I think, at any time, right?
Sure.
I don't think we have to act on that tonight, but I understand what you're saying. It doesn't quite seem fair. If you got 10 kids, you're gonna pay the same $8 as a family that only has a couple people taking a shower and flushing the potty. But
Well, when average increase is 2 to 3%, we're doing 5 and 10, plus a subsidy. That's a lot.
are you figuring that with the $2 we saved from the trash collection to?
Well, I mean, even if you take it off, you're still paying the subsidy.
Right.
I just think most people would be, as a resident, I'm, I guess, okay with adjusting the rates to come up with inflation and be the same as the village, the other villages around us and cities around us. I understand that, but I think what might bother people more is the surcharge, just because it's flat and it doesn't matter how much you use, everybody's paying the same amount. But at the same time, the debt is difficult. We have to pay our bills. All those decisions, whether good or bad, were made, 8 years ago, and here we are tonight, and we have to decide what's the best way to move forward. So,
Colleen, what's your recommendation?
I don't disagree with the rates, I disagree with the surcharge. At least at this point.
Completely?
At least at this point. I'm not saying that, you know, a month or two down the road when we know kind of where we are and where we are with Oak Grove, that maybe we need to do that.
I assume that, I obviously wasn't part of this formulation, but I assume that we came up with a dollar we need to generate within a certain time period in order to cover these costs. We can call it a surcharge, or we can make it a 25% rate increase to get to that dollar. But either way, I'm assuming these papers and our formulations indicate what we need to raise in order to cover the debt. So perhaps it's semantics, but whether you call it a surcharge or instead of a 5% rate increase, there is no surcharge and a 25% rate increase. It's the same amount at the end of the day as far as the village goes. It might vary somewhat, a couple of dollars between families, depending on how large they are. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to raise X number of dollars to pay the bills. So surcharge, rate hike, doesn't matter what we call it, we need to make money to pay the bills. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that the $10 flat seems draconian, but I assume if we don't have the surcharge, and, you know, tell me if I'm wrong, that our rate increase needs to be humongous to cover it. So that also would seem to any resident with a fixed income, and well, we're all on fixed incomes, right? It doesn't change from month to month. That would seem too much at that point. I mean, so I guess the way I see it is, it doesn't matter what we call it, whether we're calling it a surcharge or whether we're calling it a rate increase. Ultimately, we're getting to a dollar figure with a mix of those two things. And if we don't use one of them, then the other one changes. It's just going to be a little of this. So I don't know if your concern is, you said you don't have a concern with the rate hike, but your concern is with the surcharge. If we have no surcharge, then your rate hike is bigger. Do we still have a problem? Do you still have a problem with the rate hike at that point? Because if you don't, at the end of the day, it's the same amount of money, just calling it different stuff.
How about if you rebate the surcharge if tap fees makes the payment for that 6 months?
I don't think you rebate taxable money, but, well, you take the word tax off the table, surcharge. If we don't go forward, beginning with the bills that go out in February with the surcharge, and nothing changes. Nothing changes. Come June, we'll probably be looking at a $20 surcharge, because we still have a fixed contractual amount that we have to pay the state that we don't have the money for. So, I can understand the concern Colleen has, $10. I mean, it's gonna be $120 a year if you multiply it times the, course of the year, but the options are unacceptable.
We do have a time limit on the resolution. Is there not a time limit built in the resolution? Was it 3 years?
3 years.
It was 3 years.
Yeah, but then, again, if for some reason residential took off and it wasn't needed, that's fine. That, it can be changed by resolution.
The water went off 3 years early.
I haven't gotten a raise in 5 years.
Yeah. You know
I
about
mean,
that?
come on.
Yeah.
I think another way we can look at it is our rates are much lower, not than all the other villages or cities, but they're lower than many, so, I mean, again, if you wanna talk semantics, we can say we've been getting a discount for quite some time, so.
I'd like to know where you guys are coming up with where cheaper.
Actually,
I've got
we
5
filed
different people
EPA
to tell me.
records.
EPA can say whatever. You go ask someone up in another place in Union County, you go into Hilliard, I used to pay $30 a month.
Yeah, well, try Marysville today.
Yeah, because you're telling
They're
We drink
still lower
bottled
than us.
water.
Huh?
We drink bottled water at our house. We won't drink
Yeah,
this
because
water.
plain city
So-
water sucks.
Not anymore.
Drink bottled water.
I mean, it's amazing, you know. Everyone up there probably has got an increase on their wages, but 90% of the community hasn't.
All right,
No dump truck was needed.
So, there is, we are ready for the third reading of ordinance 3013.
I make a motion to approve the third reading of 3013.
I'll second it.
Ms. Davis,
Yeah.
Mr. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins,
No.
Mr. Walter.
Yes. Okay, I'd make a motion to approve the third reading of 3113, which is the sewer surcharge.
Second?
Ms. Davis,
No.
Mr. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins,
No.
Mr. Walter.
Yes.
All right. So we have a new business. We already talked about Oak Grove. The next item is the minimum wage increase. State raised minimum wage, so we are doing likewise. Another one of those things we can't control, mandated. This is resolution
114.
114, providing for hourly rate increases for municipal swimming pool employees in accordance with state of Ohio minimum wage law.
Okay, so the minimum wage only applies to our summer workers at this point?
Correct.
Right. And this is a state of Ohio increase. The state of Ohio is 10 cents over the federal minimum wage.
We have no choice in this, we have to.
Yeah, we have to.
Just my son's a lifeguard, so I'll abstain.
What is the ordinance?
It's resolution 1-14.
I make a motion to approve resolution 1-14.
Second.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Kaiser,
Abstain?
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins,
Yes.
Mr. Walter.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so the next one we have is Resolution 214. It's authorizing competitive bidding for electrical service to village properties.
Can I ask a question on this? I saw in the transmittal that it was called aggregation. Didn't everybody in Madison County get put into an aggregation program several years ago by the commissioners?
You had to opt in, I believe.
Pardon me?
You had to opt in.
I thought you had to opt out.
No, I think you had to opt in.
Okay. Okay. Second, that if we put out a solicitation, does that mean that somebody other than AEP or Ohio Edison could bid on this? So it'd be a third-party provider that's basically a middleman that works on paper. My concern here is, last week I saw a situation on I'm okay with the main carriers, but there was a carrier that was getting bad press that provided electric service to Olentangy Commons, and during the real cold weather, that entire complex, who had a third-party provider, was out of electricity for like 2 or 3 days. And I'm thinking, okay, there's nobody to hold accountable. I mean, this is a company that doesn't do anything except rebill for services. And so I was a little concerned with that, and I've also been concerned with the concept of aggregation. So,
Well, basically the way, and Kevin can talk more to it, but essentially, we're not buying it, we're not using a third party's lines. We're still using the lines that exist, and they will be serviced by AEP or whomever.
You still have your electric generation companies, and then they try to sell those units of energy to everybody. So it's based on how much they buy and how cheaply they can sell it off. But if a line falls down across Main Street, we will still be calling First Energy.
okay, because the issue that was on the news is it wasn't AEP and it wasn't Ohio Edison that was taking the heat. And there was a representative for the company there, and he was talking another 24 hours in sub-zero, and I didn't understand that, so I just want to make sure we go into this with our eyes
No,
open.
your points are valid, and as a matter of fact, Mr. Lafayette and I had those same concerns, and we met with Tim Suter from First Energy, and he walked us through and assured us that they're still in charge of
Okay,
the distribution system, and they will still be the ones we call.
okay.
You're
Right,
just
the past time-
purchasing the electric itself. I
Right.
used to work for an energy company, so and it was a third party. So we just purchased the actual electric to make it cheaper, but it is still Edison provided.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I think in the last contract we've had it through Duke, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so our electric been provided under Duke on the last contract, we're going
Okay.
from this next electric.
Historically speaking, we haven't bid this out in the past.
We've not.
Now, given that we've not done that, do we expect then to see an increase or a decrease, or any sense of that?
From what we're hearing right now is the market right now is substantially increased from what our rates currently are.
Right, they said that our last contract, when we had it reviewed, we had a very good deal the last time around, and it's unlikely that we're gonna see a deal that good. Now, as far as the bidding cap, I can only tell you that I would have recommended that we bid it last time. Now, just because the dollar amount that's required, it gets above the minimum amounts that we have to have publicly bid. Now, fortunately, regardless of the fact that it wasn't publicly bid, we went through a provider that auctioned the services and actually got us an outstanding bid, which would have been better than anything had we done it publicly bid. But we do have to go through that process, I believe. So,
Okay, that answers my questions, thank you.
All right. If there's not anything else, then this is resolution 214.
This is the first reading. Move to pass resolution 214, first reading.
Second.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah.
Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Walter?
Yes,
Okay, council. We're at the end of our agenda. Anyone have anything to share, anything going on you want to?
One of the things I thought we should probably talk about is, do we want to still keep it, 2 regular meetings, and for this calendar year not do work session? We're assuming we're going off last year's decision, but are we just doing okay with still doing work sessions as needed on a voluntary basis if things come up and we need to meet?
We eliminated work sessions previously due to budget constraints. And currently, it's just the council meeting the 2nd and 4th, which that middle week, we used to have a Tuesday. So unless council is wanting to change that, I think you need it.
But some of those questions, like you brought up, Colleen, about that would be a great, that we could get into the paperwork and stuff. So if we ever feel like we need to have one of those, we can do that at any time. So if you're feeling like something's coming along too quickly, we need to talk and pause and work through it a little bit, we can do a work session, just request it, we can make it happen.
Do we need to discuss the charitable payments?
Charitable payments.
all the water,
We can. You all saw the emails. You saw Paul's recommendation.
I thought Paul's recommendation to refer this to a church or a true charitable organization for administration was appropriate. It still allows for the process. It takes the village out of the process of making a decision on who would get, a little bit of help for a water bill that's past due this month. And I think I copied everybody. I saw a similar situation when I sat on the fire board about 3 or 4 years ago, where something similar to this, where the fire district took money and then distributed money for Christmas gifts for children. was written up by, there was an audit finding, and we don't want to see that. So that's the thing that flagged it for me. But I think Paul's recommendation to kind of get somebody from a charitable organization to kind of head this, and we'd simply refer residents in need to them, and then that charitable organization then can work with the village for payments.
Yeah, so long as our hands are off of the holding the money, the decision of where the money goes or which bills get paid, then once we're out of that, then I think we're fine. I don't think it's our position to do that, and I think Nick raised some good points as well, so. And Leslie, I think, was actually the one that mentioned more directly as far as what organizations.
We might even look at the DNA since it's more of a community service too.
I think DNA would probably.
Ideally, if it was a charitable nonprofit organization, those people making the donations could then write it off as a tax deduction. So a church or some kind of a 401c organization where it's tax deductible might help stimulate more donations.
So, if you're all okay with it, then that's probably the thing to do. You can contact DNA and ask them if they're interested. If they're not, there's also the fellowship churches, or there's other,
Could we get the food pantry to do that?
I don't know, we can ask them.
I mean, anybody can do it, I think, and it doesn't have to be one. Whoever wants to do it, as long as the village is in the decision-making process of who gets the write-off on their bill, and so long as we're not the ones in the business of collecting the money for that purpose, that's fine. I mean, I think we just, everybody can do it. If
The
every
money
church
could
did
go
it, we
to
could
the
all do it.
pantry, but it wouldn't be for their use. It would be for whatever the person designated that for. So, they would really just become an entity that's moving money.
Maybe we talk to a couple people and you put a pamphlet together for people that come in to make donations and say, here, call one of these organizations. That way we're not leading to just one organization either.
And Renee, with the water bill, are you able to sort as far as just by account number, so the names aren't going out? We don't want to embarrass anyone, but for those accounts that are in jeopardy, and be able to publish that on a monthly basis for any charitable organization that wants to request it. Here are the accounts that are in jeopardy. They're all just by number. If you want to help somebody out, make your anonymous donation or pay that particular account number, and then we can do that.
I would like to see it, again, just be the charity's discretion, where if somebody needs assistance, they go to that charity, state their case. Because, I'm sure there's people that are in dire straits, then there's some people that just don't pay their bills.
Right.
So, when you're looking at account numbers and you see a negative balance, you're not gonna know the reasoning behind that. So I'm like, I agree with Paul, I think we should be totally out of it. Let that charity give those people a check and say, make it out to the village, here's for your water bill.
We have no money right now, so we
Okay.
just won't be collecting anymore. And we'll just refer people to a charity, to assist through a charity. All right?
Great.
Good. Okay, good, I forgot that. Anything else? Yes?
Just a couple things, real quick. The UPCO annual meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 7 o'clock out here at Elk Crest Winery. They had a water line break and pretty much ruined their tasting rooms, so we can't do it there. It is going to be at Lee's instead, over on Bigelow Street, upstairs in their party room, same time, same date. And then the other thing, I see a lot of resolutions and ordinances over the last year. I've seen a lot of resolutions and ordinances come through here. Where can I find those to look at them, review them, like when they're first reading, second reading, third reading?
During the initial process, my office, and then once they're passed, they go out to Ridgewood Bank, Security National Bank, Yoder's Hardware Store, and the library.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Anything else? long meeting for your first meeting.
I'd just like to thank council and Mr. Vaughn for clearing up the water situation. I came a month ago and complained, and you got it fixed.
I have a question for you too. Is there any way that you're able to send in a revised budget for the funding that
We'll talk
assistance?
about Thursday, I'm not sure what,
Great, I thought maybe you could.
I'll let you know.
Good. Excellent.
We'll, don't worry about it, we'll come out somehow. You know, it amounts to about $8,000, but we'll find it.
I think you can revise, I'm pretty sure you can, and get additional dollars. Yes.
Is there going to be a report on year-end financials for 2013?
Well,
Not mine,
no, but it'll go out to council and be available certainly at that point to the public. Yeah. All right,
Make a motion to adjourn.
thank you, council.
Second.